Nothing is free. Compare and decide if it is worth it. Martin, a first-year college student, gets into severe financial difficulty. His problems began when he obtained a credit card because he was burned out and thought he needed a diversion. Martin simply did not understand how to use marginal analysis in his buying decisions. Martin needed help. He was in over his head. It had all seemed so easy at first, but things had come to a crashing halt. His first year in college had been rough. Even though he had been a decent B student in high school, Martin found college to be a completely different story. He was only taking 3 classes, which should have been a breeze, but Martin's school was on the quarter system, and the time just flew by. Before he knew it, it was week 10. Papers were due, finals were looming, and he was way behind. He was scraping by with C's and D's, but he was used to doing better than that in school. Something needed to change if he was going to make it in college. During his second quarter, Martin hit the books. He played less basketball, saw his friends less, and eased up on the parties. He still wasn't seeing the A's and B's he earned in high school, but his grades had definitely improved. The only problem was that he was worried about burnout. He had no life. He had to make another change or he felt like he'd go crazy. It was spring when Martin first noticed some people giving out credit card applications outside the bookstore. Maybe that was the cure for his burnout. If he could treat himself to something once in a while, that would take his mind off the pressures of school. He took an application, filled it out, and in 2 weeks his very own credit card came in the mail. He only had a $500 limit, so how much trouble could he get in? $100 later, Martin had a bag full of new music. He went home, turned on U2, and started studying. He felt better immediately. As long as he was reasonable about this, what was the problem? Credit cards were great! But Martin forgot about the reasonable part. After the CDs came new speakers, new clothes, and new tires for his truck, among other things he decided he needed. And it was so easy to apply for new cards. Soon, Martin had a bunch of cards with balances totaling nearly $5,000. He was still paying off his truck, which was $265 each month for 3 more years. Luckily, his truck loan interest rate was only 12%. To pay his debts, including his truck payment and insurance, Martin had to work 40 hours a week. Grades suffered, social life suffered, and Martin suffered. He hadn't realized that he would be paying such a high opportunity cost when he chose to make his purchases on credit. It was almost like he thought the things he was charging were free. Flipping through the paper, Martin saw an ad for a Clean Credit Company Incorporated. They promised to get a copy of your credit report, eliminate all your credit problems by getting bad news off the record, and giving you a secured credit card. This card would only let you borrow what you had in your bank account. Martin thought the whole idea sounded great, so he sent in the $295 application fee. The next day, he was talking to his friend Maria. Why hadn't he talked to her before? Her cousin had done the same thing, only to find out that anybody could get a copy of their credit report and a secured credit card application for little to no charge. The other stuff was a scam. In other words, Martin was out another $295 he didn't have. Maria suggested he try calling the Consumer Credit Counseling Service. This nonprofit organization helps people who have credit problems. Martin called and made an appointment with Mr. Lopez, who was friendly, knowledgeable, and helpful. Mr. Lopez immediately dispelled some myths about what he could and could not do for Martin. He couldn't magically clean up a credit report or make debts go away. He could help Martin set up a reasonable payment plan and help him avoid future credit problems. Martin quickly understood he'd have to pay his debts. But how had he gotten in so much trouble? Mr. Lopez told Martin he was making 2 big mistakes. He was buying things that were pretty extravagant, and he was spending more money for add-ons than was necessary. Early on, Martin bought new stereo speakers to go with his older system. The old system would work for now, but he felt new speakers would help him study better. They were $500 apiece. They were better than what he had before, but were they $1,000 better? Was the additional sound quality worth what he could have done with the $1,000? He bought his sister a $200 outfit for her birthday, even though he knew a card would make her happy. Martin had seen a $70 outfit that also looked nice. Was the one he bought worth what he could have purchased with the additional $130? Next, Martin bought a brand new pickup truck for $20,000 because he had to get back and forth to work and school. He could have bought his mom's old car, which was still reliable, for $2,000. Why did he need a new truck? Compared to his mom's car, was the additional benefit from the truck worth what he could have done with $18,000 plus the interest he was paying? Martin had a habit of renting videos he didn't watch. He'd rent 3 at a time because the third one was free. He'd seldom watched more than one. Was the additional $3 for the second video worth it? Instead of driving up to see his brother in Northern California, Martin paid $600 for a plane ticket. Driving would have cost about $150 in gas. Did he have to visit his brother when he knew he'd be home in a month for their mom's birthday? Was the flight worth an additional $450 of other things he could have purchased?
Just a few weeks ago, Martin took 2 friends to a concert, and he bought the most expensive seats, which were $90 each. The cheapest tickets were $40.
Did Martin have to go to the concert? Did he have to pay for his friends? Was the additional benefit for the best seats worth what he could have purchased with the $150? Clearly, Martin wasn't recognizing scarcity, looking at his wants and prioritizing them. He was not thinking at the margin. Often when we buy things, we listen to people who tell us, for only a few dollars more you can have, and then we're stuck paying more than we intended for things we often don't even want. The problem is compounded when the purchase is easy, because it can be put on a credit card. Using marginal analysis means evaluating the difference in benefits of 2 alternatives, and then deciding what you will have to give up to gain the additional benefits. This is especially difficult when you use credit cards, because the what you will have to give up part is hidden in the future. If Martin allocates money to go to Northern California, he is giving up what he could have purchased with the money he uses. If he allocates money to renting a second video, he's giving up what he could have purchased with that money.
If he allocates money to buying the best concert tickets, Martin gives up what he could have purchased with the money he uses.
The key to recognizing marginal analysis is the comparison between 2 alternatives. So what about Martin? Well, he now owed $8,104 in principal and interest on his unsecured debt. Mr. Lopez had some suggestions for Martin. First, he had to shred his credit cards. Next, he had to work on paying off his debt. They worked on a budget, and at 12.4% interest, it would take 5 years to completely pay off the debt if Martin paid $203.16 per month. He'd be paying a total of $4,170 in interest alone for the privilege of using the credit cards. Martin had failed to recognize the relationship between his easy monthly payments and the total amount he would be paying. Mr. Lopez pointed to the numbers. If Martin's outstanding balance were only $2,000 with an 18.5% interest rate, he could pay about $35 each month. That sounded fine, except that it would take 11 years to pay off the debt. The worst part was that Martin would be paying a total of $1,943 in interest, which was almost as much as the original $2,000. Martin realized he'd gotten himself into a real mess. The only way out was to follow Mr. Lopez's advice. What an opportunity cost he'd be paying. Because of his debts, he was working 40 hours each week, which meant he had less time to spend on school. As a result, he had to take fewer classes per semester, which meant it would take him 5 or 6 years to finish college. He hadn't thought of that when he went on his spending frenzy. Martin began to ask himself if college was really worth it. Using the marginal analysis technique Mr. Lopez showed him, he looked at the cost of another 4 years, and he wasn't sure the benefits would be worth it. He talked to his mom, and she told him to look at a chart she had seen in the newspaper.
The third column shows the additional income that a person is likely to earn with additional years of education. Compared to a high school diploma, Martin's college degree was likely to bring him an additional $38,798 per year for every year he worked. Over double.
It was too bad he had put himself in this position, but Martin's thoughts of quitting college quickly faded. He would simply have to become a hermit, going to work and school and paying the opportunity cost of his credit abuse by giving up a social life until he was out of college and his debts were paid off.